On a bitter winter night with snow falling like shattered glass from the sky, a 17-year-old boy named Noah wandered the back streets of the city, clutching nothing but a threadbare backpack and the quiet ache of hunger in his chest. He was used to cold, used to being invisible, used to the world walking past him like he didn't exist. But that night, the silence was broken by a sound he couldn't ignore. A faint, trembling cry, barely louder than the wind, coming from near the church dumpster. And when he got closer, his heart stopped. Inside a soaked cardboard box was a newborn baby, shivering, barely, breathing, wrapped in nothing but a torn blanket. Noah didn't hesitate, though he had nothing, no family, no home, not even gloves. He took off his only coat, wrapped it around the baby, and ran. What he did next didn't just save a life, it changed the fate of an entire town. Noah was 17, but life had made him feel much older. Most nights he slept behind an old bus stop near Maple and 3rd, the kind of place people passed without looking, rust-stained bench, cracked glass. A flickering streetlight that buzzed like it too was tired of being ignored. That corner had become his shelter, not because it was warm, but because it was the only place that didn't throw him out. He had no parents, no guardians. The system raised him until it didn't. He aged out just like they said he would, with a bag of secondhand clothes, a name on paper, and no one waiting on the other side. Since then, he survived off odd jobs, stacking crates, washing windshields, collecting leftovers that coffee shops tossed before closing. No one ever remembered his name. Most didn't even look him in the eye, so Noah stopped expecting kindness, stopped trusting it, because every time someone offered a hand, it usually came with conditions he couldn't afford. But even in that hard shell, something soft remained. Every morning, just before dawn, he visited the alley behind Romano's bakery. Not for food, but for a scruffy orange cat with one ear and a crooked tail. He called her Toast. He never petted her, never picked her up, just left crumbs and spoke softly, because even the most broken people still crave connection. That night, the wind cut through the streets like a knife, the kind of cold that didn't just chill skin, it burrowed into bone. Noah had tucked himself behind the bus stop, curled into a ball, his arms wrapped around his chest. He'd survived worse, but just as his eyes began to drift shut, he heard something, a sound that didn't belong in the night. At first, he thought it was the wind, but then he heard it again. Soft, broken cry, like someone trying to hold on to life with nothing but breath. He stood, followed the sound down the side of the church, past the trash bins, past the frozen puddles, and there, next to the dumpster, was a cardboard box soaked through at the edges. Inside it, a baby, a newborn, skin turning blue, tiny fists clenched tight against the cold. Noah froze. He had no phone, no family, no idea what to do, but his body moved before his mind could catch up. He dropped to his knees, pulled off his coat, the only real thing he owned, and wrapped the baby inside it. Her breathing was shallow. Eyes barely open, he whispered, "It's okay. I've got you. I've got you." Then he ran, through the snow, through the streets, toward the only place he could think of, the old church on 9th and Elm. Each step was a prayer, each breath a plea. "Please, please be open." The doctor said it was a miracle that the baby even survived. Without warmth, without help, she would have died within minutes. But somehow, she was still here, fragile, fighting. The NICU had become her world, surrounded by machines, beeping monitors, and the steady hum of hospital lights. And yet, in the middle of that sterile clinical environment, something inexplicable had begun to happen. Noah was there every day. The nurses, having seen the quiet desperation in his eyes, allowed him in every single time. He wasn't family. He wasn't even sure if he had a right to be there. But he came, day after day, speaking to the tiny life that lay beneath the incubator's glow. He spoke to her as if she could hear, as if she could understand every word. He told her about the streets, about the cold nights, about the loneliness. The words tumbled out, not expecting an answer, but somehow hoping she might sense the kindness in his voice, that something inside her might stir. And then, one day, it happened. Noah's voice, soft and hesitant, filled the small space of the NICU. He reached a finger through the incubator's small opening, just to see if she'd respond. To his surprise, the baby's tiny hand moved. At first, it was just a twitch, but then it became more deliberate, her little fingers wrapping around his, gripping him with an innocent strength that shocked him. He blinked, unsure if what he was seeing was real, but it was. The baby smiled, a fragile, sweet curl of her lips. A simple gesture, yet it felt like the world had stopped for a moment, like she had just acknowledged him in a way he could never have imagined. Something shifted inside Noah. For the first time in years, he felt needed. There was someone out there who relied on him, who could sense him, even in the midst of the pain and the chaos he carried. He wasn't just another lost soul wandering aimlessly. In the soft grip of her tiny hand, he found a purpose. For the first time in what felt like forever, he mattered. And as the days went by, his visits became the highlight of his routine. He wasn't just showing up for the baby, he was showing up for himself too. Each day, a little piece of the numbness inside him began to thaw, a little warmth returning to his heart. One day, as Noah sat by the incubator, his finger gently wrapped in the baby's tiny hand, a nurse couldn't help but capture the moment. Her camera clicked softly, the flash barely visible in the dim light of the NICU. She knew the story of Noah and the baby was special, but she never expected it to spread so fast. The next morning, local news stations picked up the story, and before he knew it, Noah's life had changed. The headline read, "Homeless Teen Saves Abandoned Baby." The story quickly gained traction, painting Noah as a quiet hero, a homeless teenager who had saved the life of a helpless child, showing the world a side of him no one expected. Overnight, Noah became a symbol of resilience, a beacon of hope, in the face of adversity. But despite the growing attention, Noah stayed in the shadows, hiding from the cameras and reporters who camped outside the hospital. He didn't feel like a hero. He wasn't looking for recognition. He was just a boy who found purpose in caring for a baby who needed him. The town, once indifferent to the homeless youth that roamed its streets, suddenly woke up. The story of Noah and the baby spread like wildfire, stirring something deep inside the community. People who had turned a blind eye to the struggles of the forgotten were now paying attention. And for the first time in a long while, they saw the faces behind the labels they had once dismissed. Donations began pouring in, both for the baby and for Noah. What had started as a small act of kindness turned into a movement. People dropped off clothes, food, and money. Some even offered to adopt the baby, though her fate was still in the hands of the hospital. But it wasn't just the baby who found hope. Noah, too, was swept into the wave of generosity. People wanted to help him, to give him a chance at a future he hadn't even dreamed of. Among those touched by the story was a wealthy woman who had once ignored the homeless. Moved by Noah's quiet heroism and the powerful shift in the town's collective heart, she joined the cause. She used her influence and resources to help fund the shelter, determined to make sure that no more teenagers would be left to fend for themselves. The town had changed, and so had Noah's future. As the town's support for Noah grew, the offers flooded in. Money, housing, scholarships, all promises of a new life, a future that Noah had never imagined. The world was suddenly open to him, full of opportunities he never thought possible. But despite all the things being handed to him, Noah felt conflicted. What good was all of it if it didn't change the bigger picture? He didn't want to be the exception to the rule. He didn't want to be the one lucky kid who got a second chance while so many others remained invisible. He didn't want his story to be a fleeting headline, a passing moment of inspiration. What he wanted, more than anything, was for the world to see the kids like him, the ones who lived in the shadows, overlooked and forgotten. One afternoon, as people gathered around him, hoping to shower him with praise and gifts, Noah spoke up. His voice was steady, but his words carried the weight of his truth. "If you really want to help," he said, looking each person in the eye, "don't make it about me. Make sure no kid out there has to sleep in the cold again. Make sure they're seen." His plea wasn't for himself. It was for every invisible soul still out there, waiting for someone to care. Inspired by Noah's words, the town rallied together to create real change. The old community center, which had once stood as an empty building, was repurposed and transformed into a youth shelter. Walls that had once been filled with silence now echoed with the sounds of laughter, conversations, and the rustle of paper as volunteers worked tirelessly to give these young people a chance at something better. Noah's role in the project became clear. He was hired as a peer mentor, his own experiences serving as a beacon of hope for those who had once been in his shoes. It wasn't just a job, it was his purpose. Each day, he shared his story, listened to others, and helped guide kids through the difficult journey of rebuilding their lives. The streets had once been his world, but now he was part of something bigger, something that would help change the future for many. As for the baby, Hope, she had grown stronger with each passing day, her tiny body filling out with health and vitality. After months in the NICU, she was finally ready to be adopted. A kind couple, who had followed her journey from the very beginning, stepped forward to welcome her into their home. They were overjoyed to offer her a life of love and stability, but even though she would now grow up in their care, the couple made a promise to Noah that would never break. They promised that, no matter what, he would always be part of her life. He could visit, be there for milestones, and continue to be the person who had saved her life. And so, Noah made one final decision. He gave her a name, a symbol of all the hope he had found in her and in himself. Hope, he whispered, the word carrying more weight than he had ever imagined. It wasn't just the baby's name, it was his too. A new beginning for both of them. Years had passed since Noah's life had been turned upside down. The streets were no longer the only place he called home. He had rebuilt himself, piece by piece, from the brokenness that once defined him. The shelter, the mentorship, the baby he had saved, Hope, had all played a part in shaping him into the man he was today. One cold afternoon, Noah found himself walking through town, his footsteps slowing as he approached the familiar alley. The same alley where, years ago, he had found the baby, a life so fragile it could have been lost forever. He could still picture the quiet moment, the sound of his heart racing as he held her for the first time. That moment had changed everything for him. Now, as he stood there, his heart full of warmth, he noticed something, a shadow sitting against the cold brick wall. It was a teen, no older than he had been when he first became lost in the world. The teen was huddled in the corner, his body shaking from the chill, his face hidden in the collar of a worn-out jacket. His presence was a stark reminder of the forgotten ones, the ones still fighting to survive, still invisible. Noah's heart ached as he stood there, staring at the young face barely visible through the shadows. He knew that look. He had worn it himself not long ago. Without thinking, he walked over, his breath clouding in the cold air. Kneeling beside the boy, Noah removed his scarf and gently draped it around his shoulders, his hands steady as he whispered, "You're not alone. I've been where you are." The teen looked up, startled at the sudden kindness, eyes wide with disbelief. He hadn't expected help, not from someone like Noah. But Noah understood now. He understood the power of a simple gesture. The boy didn't speak at first, unsure of what to say, but his eyes held something Noah recognized: the silent plea for someone to see him, to care. Noah smiled softly, a warmth in his heart that had come from years of healing. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get warm." As the boy slowly stood, a hesitant but hopeful look in his eyes, Noah led him out of the cold alley and toward a future that, for the first time, felt within reach. The simple act of kindness was everything. It was the ripple effect, the realization that sometimes saving someone else is the first step to saving yourself. Noah glanced over at the boy walking beside him, a quiet promise forming in his heart. This was how it was meant to be. The road to redemption was long, but in helping others, he had finally found his way back to himself. And in that moment, he knew there was no greater purpose than to show someone that, no matter how dark the world may seem, they were never truly alone.